I'm Bonnie Hovel, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a transition life consultant with TLC Services. I'm really happy to be here with you today to talk about this topic of managing your emotions, partly because I believe this is something that has a huge effect on our lives, and it's something we can do something about. So we can learn skills to help us with this. The more of a whole person we are, the more effective and satisfied we can be in our lives. And we can manage ourselves, not others. And we start with ourselves because we can control that more than anything else. And if we know ourselves better, that's the first step. We can retrain ourselves if we're having problems in the area of managing our emotions. Because, things are really easy when we're having pleasant feelings, but then when we're having distress or stressful feelings, then it's not so easy. So we want to choose to let our emotions help us rather than stifle us or overwhelm us. And then we can better show up as our true selves, who we are and who we want to be in the world. We are emotional beings. Our emotions can have a huge impact. And as human beings, we're really always trying to manage our emotional safety. We seek comfort. We want to be comfortable. And to build and sustain trust is an emotional dynamic. It's all based on what we're able to do and how we feel inside and our moods and our perceived safety. There are some skills we can learn. And the first of these is just identifying what emotions or feelings we're having, and then using those, understanding them, and then managing our own emotions. And then the second thing is being aware that our emotions really do drive our behavior. While we are not our feelings, they do drive our behavior, and others can feel our overreactions. And so we need to understand that other people's reactive behavior has more to do with them than with us. So we don't have to take all of that personally. And then we need to figure out how we're going to react to their emotional ups and downs. So it gets a little complicated because we have this going on inside of ourselves, and so do other people. So if we can then recognize the emotional states of others and manage ourselves around that, then we can be doing a really good thing. We can decide, do we want to be a calming influence when other people are stressed? Or if we're not that, sometimes we can be too reactive or judging, and then we can potentially make things worse. So we're going to learn some skills to keep that from happening. Self-reflection leads to self-awareness. So one of the skills is observing ourselves. And we can learn over time. We develop our emotional muscle, just like we develop our muscles when we're working with weights. The more we practice it, the better we get at it. And it has to do with looking in the mirror, understanding who we are ourselves, and then we can have a better perspective on everything else. And if we can, part of that is just being present to our own feelings. Then, what do we do with what we know about ourselves? We self-regulate. And if we can do that, then we have more control over our emotional state. And it doesn't depend as much on others to improve or change things so that we can be okay. So we can learn to stay connected even when we're under stress. If we can easily access our feelings, then we can neutralize some of the physiological reactions that we might have, like a faster heart rate or trembling. And we can become like a stress-busting detective and figure out what works for us. Is it music? Is it breathing better? We're going to talk about several of those things, and I'm hoping that you will, in the question and answers or in the chat, we'll start adding to the conversation as far as what are some things you found out that really help, some of the coping skills. One of the skills is self-soothing, where you notice your body. And you move out of your head and into your body because it's more helpful to feel your feelings than to think about them. It's a more grounding experience. And one method is just deep breathing. We all have done this and know about this, but taking the time to do it. Let's just do one right now together. Just close your eyes and take a deep breath and hold it for about 3 counts. And now let it out. And pause before you do it again. And that's just one way. And one of the biggest benefits of this and other really simple relaxation methods is that they take us out of our stressful thoughts and they slow us down so that we can think better. And if we just pause several times a day to do this or to do whatever else works for you, we can think better, and then we can have more insights if we are not just all worried about something or having stressful emotions. Relationship healing is really mostly an inside job. It's if you ask yourself the question, what do I do when I feel unfairly treated or not listened to or not valued? Well, realizing we can help ourselves with this. We can respond to ourselves with kindness. Just like we were a child who didn't feel well, sometimes it helps to think of it as a child rather than ourselves, because for some of us, it's easier to help another person than to help ourselves. Again, we need to befriend ourselves and say, who am I? What have I been through? And I've been successful. And comfort ourselves, and then we can move on. And I like to call this being on your own team. If you're not on your own team, then how are other people going to join your team and help support you? Now I'm going to go through several categories of emotions. Emotions are powerful. We can't just disregard them. And our mood affects our interactions. It's how we deal with challenges, how we spend our time. Everything's affected by our mood. And the goal is to be able to experience uncomfortable emotions, but not stay stuck in them. So if we just ignore them, it doesn't really make them go away. They kind of build up inside of us. And if they're not addressed, then they can get worse over time. And sometimes people will use unhealthy ways of dealing with them, like overeating or drinking alcohol to excess. And so if we can acknowledge them while we're recognizing they don't have to control us, and we do that by labeling them, putting a name to them, sitting with them. There might be more than one feeling going on, but if we can get better at that, it's really useful. Then we can reframe our thoughts, figure out what filter are we using? What are we thinking about this? What would you say to a friend? Like you could think that, I own my emotions so they don't own me, and having this feeling that I don't have to let it take over. So I'm going to go through several categories. The first one is anger. And there's this misconception that feeling angry is the same as acting angry. Well, that isn't always the case. Sometimes people are holding it inside, and that assumes you have no control over your behavior. So anger is a whole continuum. It doesn't have to just be angry, acting angry, feeling angry. It can go everywhere from lesser kind of anger, being just a little upset or impatient, irritated, agitated. It can go all the way up to being really furious. You can see all the words on this slide that are related to anger, and there are many more. So the information it's giving us is that something has been violated, something we care about, either ourselves or our values have been violated, and we don't like that. The gift it gives us is the ability to set boundaries, and it motivates us to set boundaries, to say, I am going to accept this, I'm not going to accept that, so that we don't have to keep experiencing anger over the same things over and over again. Now we can have too low of an access to anger. And if that happens, we don't set boundaries and we might get taken advantage of. So there's actually a risk to not paying attention to the anger at all. And also there's a risk if it's really too high. If it's too high, it can take over our whole being. It can be kind of our persona. Our boundaries could be too thick and we could be unapproachable to other people. So those are some of the things that we can learn from anger. Anxiety has the same set of things. Anxiety, a certain amount of it is normal and healthy to have. And it can go everywhere from being uneasy to feeling nervous, to being skeptical, can go all the way up to being overwhelmed, perplexed, paralyzed. The information it gives us is that I have either too much information or I don't have enough information. And there's a gift in that. And the gift is we seek clarity. And that clarity will help us in deciding what actions we're going to take. So the risk, if it's too low, is we can take premature action because we're not asking those questions for clarity. And if we access it too easily, we can become paralyzed or we can over-prepare. We can become perfectionistic. So some of us might see that in our lives or the lives of our friends. Each of us has a tendency to tune into one of these categories of feelings more than others or less than others. So we're all going to have different challenges. Fear. Now with fear, you could just be a little tense. You could be suspicious, defensive, alarmed, or really frightened or scared. The information is just a basic, something is threatening me, and the gift is safety. If I pay attention to that, I can keep myself safe. Well, if I don't pay enough attention to that, then I might not protect myself very much. I might go bungee jumping. And maybe that's not something that's really safe for me to do right now in my life. And if it's too high, though, if my access to fear and paying attention to fear and letting it overtake me, then I could be so risk averse that I don't try anything fun or anything new. There could be that kind of a ramification if I really tuned into fear a lot. Sadness. Now, here's one. We think, who wants to feel sadness? Well, none of us wants to be sad. But there can be lesser degrees of it. Like we could just feel a little empty. It could be grieving something, a loss. We could feel lonely or disappointed. Now, all of us have had things like this at some point in our lives. We can just feel really sorry about something and not know what to do about it. Miserable, excuse me, all the way up to being so sad that we have a depressed mood. And the information here is lost. We've lost something. We've lost something important to us. And that information gives us the gift of sensitivity. And it's a gift because when we are sensitive, then we are kinder to ourselves because we realize what we've been going through. Or if it's about another person, we're sensitive to what they've been going through. We can tune into them better. We know what it feels like. Now, if we don't tune into this at all, or it's really low, then we could be seen as aloof or experienced by other people as aloof or not really be able to be with others in their sadness. You might come across as more empathic if you're someone who can tune into that sadness in others. And if we have too much access to sadness or it's really high, then we can feel overwhelmed. And again, that could almost immobilize us. And sometimes it's an indicator that we need help from someone else if it's too far in that direction. Now, here's one that's a pleasanter category, joy. And joy doesn't just mean being happy. It can be all these things. It can be feeling confident, being curious, eager, encouraged, passionate, energized. All of these things are part of joy. Optimistic, surprised. The information this gives us is confidence. And the gift of confidence is vitality and resilience. We can stay in a relationship or with ourselves. We can stick it out when things are hard. And we have energy to do that. And without that energy, it's really tough to do that. If it's too low, in fact, if our access to joy is too low, then we can experience depletion. If it's too high, maybe we've all known someone with a lot of joy who just comes in a room and fills the room with their joy. Now, that can actually come across as almost intimidating to others. And why would that be? We think we couldn't have too much joy. Well, if there's not much space for anyone else because it's all filled with one person's excitement, then that can be hard for other people at times. So it could go overboard if it never varies with someone, which is rare. We usually have ups and downs, all of us do. So the work for all of us, the more we can build on our joy and figure out the things that fill our joy bucket, so to speak. It's not just filling the bucket, but doing things that bring us joy. Also discovering what things deplete us. What things are we doing some obligations that maybe our heart isn't in? I like to work with clients and have them say, what do I want to hold on to? What's important to me and do I want to hold on to? And what can I let go of? Because it's maybe not something that's helping me in my life and helping me feel good in my life. So there are a couple of different categories of ways we manage emotions. There's harmful ways and there's helpful ways. The harmful ways include denying them, so we don't get the information, withdrawing from other people, so then we don't work it out and find solutions, ridiculing, sometimes it's even ridiculing ourselves or somebody else, or bullying is a stronger word, but just ridiculing is not a good way to handle emotions. And substance use is not a good way. And helpful ways, you can spell out PATH, as you can see here on the slide. Pause. Pausing is important because it gives us a chance to step back and see what's going on. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Think, because you have tools, you have your brain, you have things you can think of that will help you. And then the H stands for help yourself. There's lots of ways you can help yourself, and we're going to go through a few more of those. These are the practices that I recommend for people to manage their emotions. Under self-reflection is just being present, noticing what's going on now inside of you. And in red, you see, recognize and name your thoughts, wants, and feelings. What do I think? What do I feel? What do I want? And if you can label them and articulate them in your mind, then you're much better able to present yourself to someone else about that. And you can reframe your thoughts in that process. If I'm thinking something that might be true, but it's destroyed, it's not helpful, then you can change that. And use a journal. I love using a journal. I have one that I actually like it partly because I think it's pretty. And I put things in here like things that I'm grateful for. I just list a few things on a day. Affirmations, things that I believe about myself. You can just write at the top of the page, I am, and put some adjectives of what you are, some things you are. So I put things down for myself. I am brave. So if I'm not feeling good someday, then I can open that up and I can remind myself of all the things I am. I'm kind, I'm loving. So I'm telling you only the good ones. And when we read those, we can remind ourselves that we're capable people. We can take our qualities and we can use them. And then you can kind of keep track in the journal if you're so inclined to write things down of what works and what calms you. When I did this on one day, what happened? Did it make my day better? Did I have a great day all day or not? And then you can kind of keep track of it. You can be like your own a detective or a research scientist about your own self and figure this out. Now, under the category of empathy, empathy is something you can give yourself as well as others. And that goes a long way in calming your emotions and feelings. Because if you say to yourself, yes, I'm feeling stressed, but I know how to deal with that. I'm going to go sit for a while and breathe deeply. And I'm going to think about some good things about myself and what I'm going to do for the rest of the day. So you can empathize with yourself and with others. And the best way to empathize with others is by being curious and asking them open-ended questions that you don't know the answers to. If you ask a question of someone that can be answered by yes or no, that isn't the same as an open-ended question where you learn more from them. And the more you learn from each other about each other, the better connection there is, and the better the feelings are going to be when you're around that person. And then empathy involves listening, mirroring, connecting with your nonverbal communication. We can tell if someone's not listening, can't we? Just like we could with our parents when we were children. We could tell if they were busy doing something and not really looking at us, that they weren't really listening. And we can acknowledge the other person and let them know that you're trying to understand what they're going through. And I like to say, instead of, I know just what you're feeling, that kind of discounts what another person is going through, because it sounds like you've had exactly the same experience, and none of us has really had exactly the same experience as another person. So it's better even to say, I want to understand, and I'm trying, please say more. And that helps with the conversation. And then to regulate ourselves in relationships, we can practice mood boosters, like calling a friend. And when you call a friend, it doesn't always have to be to complain about something. It can be to talk about something pleasant. Go for a walk, meditate, listen to music, whatever helps you. And then notice the good things in your life. All these things do really help you have better moods and better feelings. Notice the good things in your life and be grateful. How much does it take to thank someone for doing a nice thing? It's really an easy thing to do, and it makes both of you feel better. Be respectful, but part of that is just assuming positive intentions by the other person, unless you're proven wrong, instead of the other way around. So when we're in doubt, we can inquire instead of assuming the most negative intention. That's just another way of reframing how we're viewing something. Now, these things in red are really important. Learn how to quickly reduce your stress and calm yourself. I've talked about that several times already, but if it's deep breathing, great. And we're hoping you're coming up with ideas and starting to put them in chat or saving them for the Q&A. And then share how things impact you and explore how things impact the other. Why is that important? It's partly because we tend to leave out feelings. And if we leave feelings out, we can't practice what it is that we can do with our feelings and learn from our feelings. If I'm sharing with a friend how something impacts me, then they know me better. And I'm also practicing what I'm learning about myself and talking about it. And then you can explore how things impact the other person. So you're inviting the other person to have that level of vulnerability also. And you're making it safe for them if you're expressing your feelings. And then use humor and play. This is one of the most important things. Humor can just really release good endorphins and good hormones. And you can't really feel very bad if you're smiling or laughing. It just is a real mood booster. And the last one is resolve conflicts positively and with confidence. And by that, I mean, when something is going wrong, use your best internal wisdom. Brainstorm with yourself. Work with the other person if it's involving another person, and have the attitude, we can fix this. And what are some things we can do to fix this? It's really, it's a helpful attitude towards resolving conflicts. And most of all, have hope. I could not accomplish anything if I did not have hope within me, for the gift of hope is as big a gift as the gift of life itself. I believe this is true. And with that, I'm concluding the presentation. And thank you so much for being here.